Everybody. Thank you so much for attending. So this webinar I've actually been looking forward to since January. I've been priming it, prepping it, making sure that all of this is very applicable to you as business owners, and that you get all of the juicy details that I like to consider our secret sauce. So again, thank you for your time. I'm very excited to share what I have here. So let's begin. This is the meat of the presentation here. Again, Layla said, if you have any questions, please get involved in the chat. Let me know at the end. I will open it up for questions. I want to walk you through all of this, and hopefully you don't feel too overwhelmed by all of the information, but I'm just going to crank it out. And at the end, I will open it up for anything that might seem confusing or whatever else you want to know. So we'll just get started though. This is the secret to radical ownership over your business and the execution strategy to guarantee its survival. That might sound like a mouthful, but I promise you, you will understand what I'm talking about as I continue throughout this slideshow. So this is how you will learn how to set up a business-owned cash pool, retire without liquidating, and guarantee your business lasts for generations. We are the one-stop shop for when it comes to the ins and outs of your business, and let me show you how. First and foremost about us, so my company is Financial Wealth Solutions. I've got a little shirt on here, but we've been around for over 40 years. Obviously, I'm not over 40 or over 50, but the people I work with are very seasoned in the business and they know their stuff. We work with finances primarily, which when it comes to finances, history and experience is huge. It is absolutely essential because history kind of repeats itself, right? So if people have been around in the industry for a long time, they understand what they're talking about. They've been through it. Ideally at a certain age too, they've established themselves and you can kind of see by what they've done throughout their life if they're actually legit or not. Because I know we probably see a lot of gurus online who preach they know about finances, say they know a thing or two, and then don't actually know. There's a lot of scams. There's a lot of everything else. But we work with actuaries and lawyers and financial planners, the best in the country. And I will show you why we are the best throughout this presentation. A little bit about me. I've told you about my company, who I work for, who I work with. But me, Madison, I am also a business owner. So I am independent. I am at home. You can see that. I am able to work from home. And that is something that I chose because I realized that the key to freedom, wealth, and fulfillment is working for yourself. And I'm sure you as business owners feel the same way. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing, right? You wouldn't be here. And that for me was where actually back in 2020, I made this major shift. I realized that the 9 to 5 wasn't cutting it. I felt like a workhorse slave. My husband at the time, actually now my ex-husband, he was also working a 9 to 5. And whenever he brought home a check, it seemed like everything was going back to the government. You know, we were working for somebody else as an employer, but also we were paying our check to the government. And I realized that if I don't take matters into my own hands, then it's not going to happen. And I'm not going to have that true freedom and fulfillment that I am searching for in life. So with all that being said, I am you. I am in the same boat. I have been in the same boat. I have done this. I've put this into action. And I promise you that you will be able to see how this is very applicable and real. All of this is very real information, right? I'm not just spouting a bunch of marketing stuff that might just seem like it doesn't have depth to it, but this is the real deal. So my journey actually started again with the 9 to 5, realizing that this isn't it. And I started kind of diving down the rabbit hole. And most people know that John D. Rockefeller was one of the frontiersmen in the oil industry. And a lot of his family is still, in the oil industry today. He said back in 1903, I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers. And that for me at the time got me all riled up, right? I'm like, I do not want to be a workhorse slave. Like, I do not want to be this slave to a system for somebody else or some other big oil guy or investor or whatever. I was like, this doesn't sit right. However, he may have had a point, and I'm going to continue to go into how my own journey progressed. 120 years later, we have Seth Godin, the author of Marketing, said, there's no shortage of remarkable ideas. What's missing is the will to execute them. So remember the title of my webinar, I mentioned execution strategy. The whole point to any of this is being able to execute it. Everybody can have ideas. And I'm sure you as business owners too, if you're online or you've been on TikTok or Instagram and you have a comment section, it seems like everybody hops on your video or whatever you post or present. And it seems like everybody knows everything now, right? All of the information is accessible. It's all out there. It's for everybody. So everybody knows everything. But what is in shortage now is the will to execute them. And that's what separates you as business owners, us as business owners, from the modern workhorse 9-to-5 slave, is the will to execute the idea, to take something, learn it, apply it, and then put it forth into the world. So this is what I'm here to provide, is that execution strategy. And again, that's what separates you from the 9-to-5 workhorse. My why. I know everybody has their why, and this is something to, as you attend the show, if you are attending the show in Dallas or any of the other shows, and I happen to meet you at the workshop, I'd love to know your why. I want to know why you do what you do, why you're a business owner, what got you into this, because I know everybody has their why, and it is molded and remolded over and over and over throughout our progression and our journeys. My personal why, I kind of went into it a little bit before with the realization of the 9-to-5 and what was actually happening to the money I was making. But then it got a little bit deeper as I realized I didn't want my kids in daycare, that moms and dads are overburdened because we can't keep up with the prices of anything anymore. So you have to take matters into your own hands. I wasn't going to be caught dead in the bread line, begging for food or searching for work. And I felt like, again, back in 2020, that's kind of when my journey started. I realized that at the drop of a hat, if something happens in the economy, you can get fired. So unless you're managing or running the company, you don't have as much power. You've given up your power to somebody else. I also realized that quality real food is becoming unaffordable, mandated, and scarce. And I'm sure some of you online have also seen different comparisons of what other countries eat compared to what we eat. And it seemed like it was something that was almost inaccessible, that if I didn't have the funds to afford it, then I wasn't going to be able to afford it. And to get those funds, I wanted to pay less to the government, have more freedom to make as much as I wanted to without being penalized for it, to be able to afford the quality of life I wanted. Everyone's why. So again, I know you as an individual, as a business owner, have your why. However, at societal large, I know everyone has a why. And this is, throughout history, what has been occurring to all of us in the United States and in the world, is that now you have to make double to afford what your parents could on 100K. So no longer are you able to survive on just one income. You have to have two incomes to afford a home and maybe a car or two cars. It no longer can you survive on the same amount that your parents were able to. Social Security was never meant to be a retirement plan. It was only meant to last for about 3 years. And now we have far less workers to retirees, meaning that Social Security is not going to be a thing for us. No, it's not going to happen. Wages are not keeping up with inflation. Again, meaning that if you are working for somebody else, the affordability of things isn't going to be there. Like you have to take on an extra job or do more work or to pick up a side hustle. It's just not happening. The other reason is we don't know where taxes are going. Like when do we receive a balance statement or a balance sheet or a profit and loss statement from the government saying this is what you paid us and this is what we did with it? And let's show you a breakdown. We don't get to see that. So truly, do we really know where our tax dollars are going? So what's the solution to all of this? Ownership. Ownership is the key to all of this. And again, this is where the John D. Rockefeller little picture comes up. He's like, oh, I know what I'm talking about. Because I was really upset when I saw what he said. But now I'm like, oh, well, he knows what he's talking about. Even if maybe it was at the average person's detriment, he may have known what he was talking about. So this is where we take it and flip it. Because ownership is the key to freedom and will save you from inflation, taxes, and wage limits. Ownership is the American dream. I have heard people say that the American dream is dead. You cannot, again, afford the white picket fence home, have a wife stay home, the traditional nuclear family, whatever it is, anymore. Like it's no longer a thing. But that's not true, because it's not just about the white picket fence. The white picket fence is a symbol, right? The house is a symbol. It doesn't matter if you want the nuclear family or not. It doesn't matter. What matters is ownership. That's the key to freedom. That's the American dream, is being able to own a business, is own anything, whether it is real estate, a white picket fence, whatever. It's ownership. And that's what I'm going to dive into here on this slideshow. So my promise, by the end of this presentation, you will understand exactly how to have complete and total ownership over what you build, where to start, and what is preventing you from doing just that. My disclaimer, however, again, we talked about execution. This, like anything else, only works if you execute. So, ideas are great and all, but unless you're actually putting forth the action, none of this is going to work, right? You have to put forth the work. And I'm sure you all know that. If you're building a business, you are well aware of that. Most startup businesses fail within the first 2 to 5 years. So nothing is guaranteed. The guarantee is in trusting your own capabilities and having the right plan. And maybe that sounds very Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged to say that, but I am a true believer in that because I think that, again, with ownership, when we take ownership over our lives, over our work, over our emotions, over our actions and thoughts, we truly do take our power back. And the guarantee is in how well we know ourselves and in our own capabilities and what we have proven to ourselves to be able to do. And I'm a big believer in that, as you will see. Here's some statistics for you. If I say statistics 3 times fast, right? According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, the failure rate for new businesses is approximately 20% within the first 2 years, 45% within the first 5, and 65% within the first 10. It gradually increases over time. So I want you to keep that question in the back of your mind is like, as I progress as a business owner, why does this statistic or why does this percentage continue to grow and increase? It doesn't get easier, it gets harder apparently, right? Keep that in the back of your mind. According to Forbes magazine, only 1 in 4 business owners, that's a quarter, have a financial strategy for retirement in the form of a written plan. And as of 2020, 17% of self-employed workers now expect to either retire later than planned or not at all. They die in the fields. Actually, this is so funny. The other day, I was my dad's a big garden guy. He's a big flower guy. And we were watching like the bees and stuff. And I had seen this video, and I guess like worker bees, they will actually go when they're nearing death, I know this is like kind of morbid, but they'll go die in the flower. So they die in their work. They die in the field. We work with a lot of farmers who do the same thing. And I'll continue to talk about this again throughout the presentation, but they are so committed to their work, and business owners are so committed to their work and they're passionate about it that they die in their work. They die in the field. And this is actually something that I am trying to help you get out of, where you then have a strategy where you do not have to be the worker bee that dies in the flower. You can pass it on. You can do something else with it. You don't have to be a slave to your own business. But based on all the statistics that I just give you here, because of this, the business owners will either sell or they will bail. And that's what I'm talking to you about here, is that you will not actually have to you will not have to do that if you follow what I'm here to say. According to the 2023 survey by BizBuySell, more than half of small business owners plan to sell their business as a result of retirement. So again, that's the exit strategy. Only 30% of family businesses survive the transition from first to second generation ownership, and 12% survive the transition from second to third generation. Again, like, why the increase over time? Why has it become so much harder? I mentioned the written down plan. That is also going to be a key throughout this presentation, because at Financial Wealth Solutions, we are the conduit that allows you to go from startup to cash flowing asset to legacy. Those transitions are so hard for business owners. Anytime you level up, whether it be in business or in life, it is going to be so hard because it's new. It's unexpected. You don't know what it's like to be on the other side because you haven't been there yet. So it makes sense. But that's where our experience and our knowledge and what we provide allows you to do that at least a little bit easier. And we do this by helping you to keep it going, live off the business without also being a slave to it, and pass it on. How? Now, how do we do this? I've gone over some whys, I've gone over some whats. So how? And this is going to be like the meat of the presentation. So I really hope that you're paying attention. Through capital conservation, we're keeping money. Cash is king in this instance. Paying yourself instead of Uncle Sam. I've talked a lot about taxes. Obviously, I harp on it, and I am going to harp on it yet some more. 2, guaranteed retirement, creating fiscal, financial, money, stability so you don't have to sell. That doesn't have to be the end all be all. Generational inheritance, zero tax, debt, and probate-free estate equalization. Again, I know that's a mouthful. Sometimes this financial lingo is like a lot, but I will explain. So let's dive in deeper. Number 1, capital conservation. The secret to building wealth is to make money once you get paid over and over and over and over for it. Here's the deal. I went to a business owner's presentation, a seminar, right? A few years ago. It was like 4 years ago. And this guy got on stage and he said, you have unlimited bandwidth. You can do whatever you want. And I'm sitting there like, And maybe I'm pulling the I'm a woman card. But I have experienced burnout so much in my life that I did not agree with that. I was like, that's not true. I was like, this guy can say we have unlimited bandwidth, maybe like spiritually, mentally, and progression, whatever. I don't think that's true though on a day-to-day basis because our physical bodies need rest. Eventually, something has got to give. So, the secret to creating wealth in your business is to do the work once and then have it keep paying you. So, how do we do that? And how do we actually put that into action? Another one of the speakers got on that stage and he said the biggest problem for business owners isn't making the money, it's keeping it. So, you can make the money, you have that unlimited bandwidth, as the other speaker was saying, but how do you keep it? How do you keep what you make? How do you keep that energy that you have just thrown out into the world? This is what we show you how to do because this is the hardest thing for business owners. And what this Andrew Cordell actually was the entrepreneur. You can go look him up. He's on social media, all that good stuff. Actually, really like the guy. What he was saying is that at the end of the year, he would meet with his accountant, meet with his CPA, and they would get everything down to zero. And they would be like, yes, great, good job, man. High five. We got it down to zero. We stuck it to the man. We're not paying anything in taxes. Booyah, right? But then he started becoming asset rich and cash poor, meaning that you have to spend the money to write off the money, right? So how do you keep more of it and still write it off and not have to pay so much out the nose and work for essentially the government? Even if you're not working for an employer, you're working for the government. How do we get out of that? That is what I'm going to go into because we help you to keep more of what you make. Taxation is wealth transfer to the government. The average business owner in the United States loses more than half of their income every year to taxes. And I've got this little picture explanation, if you will, of like how it was originally in 1776. We went to war over 3% T-tax. Again, it wasn't this is like obviously has some nuance to it because we didn't go to war over the T-tax. We went over taxation. We went to war over taxation without representation. But really, how well are we being represented now? Like, if you think about it, like, is your voice heard in Congress? Because now in 2024, we're paying 37% income tax, 15% capital gains tax, sales tax, property tax, social security tax, Medicare tax. Like, it's just out the nose. Every time you make a transaction, it is taxed. What's ironic, too, is that income tax was never actually supposed to be permanent. And that's a whole other conversation. So if you see me at the Dallas show, we will talk. But we now have so many vices that are keeping us suppressed and depressed, where we no longer have this sense of urgency to change things if we allow these vices to take over. In 1930, this was very interesting. There was a Supreme Court case ruling, and it was Helvering versus Gregory in favor of the business owner. And one of the quotes from that Supreme Court case was, "Anyone may so arrange his affairs that his taxes shall be as low as possible. He is not bound to choose that pattern which will best pay the treasury. There is not even a patriotic duty to increase one's taxes." Whoa. Okay. What that means is that it's not even like a patriotic duty. You're saying like you're not obligated to have to increase your taxes or pay more or pay through the nose. Like, that's not your job as a citizen. What the ruling was in this Supreme Court case, what it was over, is that as a business owner, you do things to benefit the economy. You increase, the capacity for jobs. You put, production of commodities into society. You are increasing the exchange of the dollar. So you are actually benefiting the economy as a business owner. And this actually is proven through what you are able to deduct as a business owner each year, because the Constitution, based on these Supreme Court rulings, actually favors the business owner and the landowner the most for this reason. We believe at Financial Wealth Solutions that you are going to do better with your money than the government will. That is the end case scenario. We think that as a business owner, you should keep more of what you make. These are the tax brackets. I'm actually just going to briefly go over this because I feel like I've really delved into taxes here and you all probably are getting all fired up about it, but at least I do. Eat the rich is a lie. And when people say, eat the rich, like, yeah, we got to tax more. We got to tax the rich more. It's not actually valid because who's actually getting eaten is a small business owner. And if you look at these tax brackets, the problem is that there's a major increase when you get to about 100,000 up to about 400,000 or 500,000. And what ends up happening is that the average business owner in the United States makes about $127,000 per year. So who's actually getting eaten alive by taxes is a small business owner on average. Because when you hit a certain amount too, it doesn't increase after 37%. So once you surpass that, it's not going to keep going up, right? So we're not actually eating whatever you would consider the rich over married $730,000. You're actually just eating the small business owner. So when we say to increase taxes, we're not affecting who we think we're going to affect. It's affecting us. So again, for the average business owner, that's a whopping $50,000 end of the year to the government. Woohoo! So who writes it off? I don't know the write-off people, right? If you've seen Schitt's Creek, it's like, I don't know where it goes. We're just gonna write it off. We're just gonna make sure the government doesn't take it. Because what ends up happening is that year end, you are essentially again working for the government, even if you're not working for an employer. I've said that about 3 times now. So what if though? What if you could write that check to yourself at the end of the year and still deduct it as a top line deduction, a Section 179 deduction, dollar for dollar? That is what we do. We allow you to conserve your capital, write it off to yourself, or write the check to yourself and still write it off. You become the write-off people. Number 2, retirement. Retirement is synonymous with financial freedom and does not have to wait until the government says you can. I actually originally said here until you're older, and then a colleague of mine said that'd be offensive. I'm like, well, we all get older, you know, but retirement is synonymous with financial freedom. So it's not just, you know, when you're older, when you can retire, when you think you can retire, when your body's tired. That's not what it is. Like whenever I say retirement, it kind of goes over people's head. They're like, oh yeah, that's like so many years from now. It's financial freedom, right? That's like a catchier phrase of saying retirement is financial freedom. The most common statements we hear by retiring business owners and farmers. I mentioned we work with farmers, we work with business owners. This is our main audience or people we work with, our clientele base. And what they always end up saying every single time we hop on a call is we put everything back into the business. We lived off the business. We lived off the farm. We plan to sell the business or the land to the kids because they're the cash cow. They end up becoming land or asset rich, cash poor, right? Every year to deduct things, you have to buy a new Range Rover or buy a new car, and you just got to keep buying because if you don't get rid of the money, how are you going to keep it without having to pay it to the government? You might as well buy something than write it off to the government. And that's what ends up happening. Or they become the cute little worker bee that dies in the flower, which is very sad. The end result. These are different scenarios, and I can go into them in detail, but I know people, I have seen people, I have names of those who did not plan or prepare. They did not have a written down plan, as we mentioned before. And what ends up happening is you become the doctor next door, the $1 million practice that goes belly up because the doctor ends up becoming disabled and his hands are his bread and butter, and that's all he had. Right? He didn't take the money and put it into something else. He didn't figure out an actual written down plan, and all of a sudden they have nothing. Or you become the contractor at Home Depot. Go to Home Depot. Go to Home Depot and go talk to the guys that work there. Not like the younger ones, the older ones, and be like, hey, what did you used to do? They didn't work at Home Depot forever. Most of them are contractors that ended up selling their business or walking away from it because it was too hard or whatever it was, and they whittled down the funds. So just because you sell a business and you have this big lump sum doesn't mean it's going to last forever, right? You've got to do something with it. The third example is passing on generational debt, right? So the last slide I mentioned that these parents think they're going to pass it on to their kids. They're going to pass it on and they're going to be their little cash cow. And this is great. And that's why you have kids. No, because what ends up happening is they don't understand how that transition works. And because they didn't plan themselves for retirement, they end up passing on generational debt, not generational wealth. Because the kids, in order to pay for the parents' retirement, have to involve a third party. Land that was already paid off has to be they have to involve the bank again to be able to pay for the parents' retirement. So land that was already paid off in full is now involving a third party and they pass on generational debt, if that makes sense. So do you notice a pattern, right? And I have the different examples of depreciation recapture. You know, they have to sell off assets. There's no plan to retire. You outlive your exit strategy, failure to account for accidents or life or disability, the introduction of third party or fees, right? Lenders. Every single one of these scenarios misses the mark on financial freedom or retirement because they didn't account for risk. Every single time. Again, there's no written down plan. They don't even account for things that are inevitable, that are going to happen to most of us. Life is one big unknown, and unless you plan for and expect that, you will fail. That's just inevitable. Look at all the statistics I went over before. I mean, it was almost half. It was like almost half of business owners don't end up surviving. And that's what I'm going over here is how to make sure that you do survive, how to guarantee it. Number 3, legacy. Legacy is not limited to your children and posterity. Your legacy is your way out. It's your door out. Let's say you don't want to have kids, right? I have kids. Some people believe in having kids, some people don't. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Your legacy doesn't necessarily have to be your children. It's how you go from business runner to retired business owner, finding somebody, training somebody, whatever. Otherwise, as we have seen, as I have mentioned, even if you are not a slave to a 9 to 5, you can still be a slave to the government, your own business, time, your own body, if you fail to execute correctly. So keep in mind, according to Morgan and Westfield, a merger acquisition company, only 30% of small to medium business owners actually can sell. So let's say you're still thinking throughout the presentation, you're like, oh, I'm still going to sell. Oh, I'm going to build it this much. Oh, this is my bailout, right? The likelihood of your business being able to sell for as much as you could retire off of is very minimal. According to Forbes, again, this is actually a Forbes, I forgot to put that on there, but the likelihood of your business getting to that level of where you'd be able to retire off of is 1 in 2,500, meaning that it's very unlikely as a business owner. So I'm sure most of you as entrepreneurs and business owners are saying, so you're telling me there's a chance. There's still a chance for me. I can be the one. I'm going to be the one. Because I know business owners and entrepreneurs are very determined people, right? Perhaps, but let's plan for the worst, right? And expect the best. Here's a tale of two businesses, and this is why. The story of the Eagle Foundry. This is actually a very close to home business that I'm aware that I know them personally. This is actually my ex-husband's family business. What ended up happening is this, the father, and he's actually in the picture with the cowboy hat. He and his brothers built this business that became a multi-million-dollar business. They did grave markers, and you can imagine, I mean, everybody eventually needs a grave marker, right? So it's high demand, and not a lot of people have the skills to be able to do it. So really good business niche, right? Especially now too. But they ended up doing grave markers and vet type stuff. So they would do like little vet markers. Anyways, what ended up happening is they had a legacy. I mean, they had 11 children, a lot of kids, a lot of opportunity to pass it on to at least one, you would think. And their kids did end up working the business, and they did end up paying the retirement for the grandpa. However, when it got to the point where it was my ex-husband's turn to maybe take something on, there wasn't anything left, because there was no written down plan. They didn't pass on the plan. They just passed on the business and expected the kids to figure it out. And everything just fell apart. So it was a tree that beareth no fruit. And all of a sudden, this amazing business that this man and his brothers spent their whole life building whittled down to nothing because they didn't plan accordingly. This is Financial Wealth Solutions, and I want to show you. So this is our CEO, Craig Sorensen. He is one of the most amazing men I have ever met in my entire life. He completely changed my life. His son, Elliot, is on the left-hand side, and essentially his son, Stefan, is on the side with, he's got the scarf on. And then we've got Kim, his wife. They are the most amazing people I have ever met in my life. He is the brains behind the operation. So smart, one of the smartest men I've ever met. And this itself is a family business. My dad actually works with Craig, so a little nepotism goes a long way. But that is where we're at here, is we've got a family-owned business, and we know how to pass it on and train up the next generation and do what we need to do. So again, I've mentioned before, we are you. Like, we've done this, we put it into action. We have the fruits, right? By their fruits, you shall know them. And that's what we have for you. So what's the difference between these two businesses? Why did one fail and the other survive? The difference between the two businesses is in planning each generation. You don't just pass on the business, you pass on the plan. Again, that's what happened. That's what went wrong the first time. They're like, oh, yep, here's the business, go for it, right? And maybe they have like the plan and structure of the business. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm saying like a legacy plan. And that's what we do, is legacy planning. Since this end game is ultimately inevitable for everybody, what's going to make you move? I've talked about, taxes and not being able to keep capital and the lack of retirement for business owners, and how these are big problems for business owners. And, it's really exciting once you first get started and wanting to grow it and build it until you burn out, until you get tired. So what is it that's going to make you make a difference or make a change? It's got to hurt enough. And that's what I'm saying, is like, when you burn out, it hurts. When you are stuck at home, and personally, this is what happened to me, is I ended up having a baby at home. 2 weeks later, my husband at the time had to go up to Alaska, and I was left alone with a toddler and a newborn. And that hurt. But that hurt enough to get me to move and to change. It's got to hurt in the form of not being able to have the retirement that you've worked your whole life for. Because this is the reason I mention this, is that only 20% of motivation comes from dreams, right? Again, we get so excited, we get motivated, we're like really geared up right at the front. But motivation doesn't last. It's actually very fickle, very fleeting. The 80% comes from pain. It's got to hurt enough. And this is also why I mentioned too that I want to hear your story as a business owner. I have my why. I know you have your why. And that's what I want to know is what hurt enough to get you to be here? What was it that hurt enough in your life that made you want to do what you do? Because there's always some story behind it, always. So now you see the whys. I have dived deep into the whys of what we do, why I'm here, what could be facing you, all of that. And what we do as a company, how do we address these problems? But what is it, right? I've talked about legacy planning a little bit, but what exactly is the meat of what we do? Time to discuss the relationship. So let's put a label on this. Let's see if we want to work together, if this is something that might be the right fit for you. We offer, and again, this is a mouthful, we offer federally guaranteed, privately owned pension plans to help our clients save on taxes. Whew, overhead, right? And I've talked a lot too about like the government and how like, if you don't work for an employer, work for the government. And so this is what I wanted to mention here is that when I say federally guaranteed, privately owned pension plans, we do everything by the book. We dot our I's, we cross our T's. We make sure that you are in compliance. We are very big on compliance and control at Financial Wealth Solutions. We make sure that you will not get audited. We make sure we're not CPA. We're not a CPA firm. I'm going to go into this a little bit more. We work with your CPA. We work with your accountant. We work with your attorneys. We have a lot of actuaries who do all the pension setups, but we make sure that it is done right. I'm going to go into this too, but I also want to mention the pension portion of it. So again, we do pensions. We do privately owned pensions. So I talked about ownership and how that is the key to freedom. When you own your own pension, you literally own a cash pool. And that's what I talked about at the beginning is it's a business owned cash pool. You have ownership over it. And when you do something else like a qualified contribution plan, so that's like a 401k, everybody knows what a 401k is, everybody, because you partner with the government. And Joe Biden actually had mentioned during his presidency that he wanted to make sure that every single person was automatically enrolled into a 401k plan if they were an employee. Why? Because it allows them an opportunity to dip into something more. They can dip into retirement. However, when you personally own yours, you take out, again, that third party. You take out the bank, you take out the middleman, you take out the government, you own it. It's yours. You're in charge of it. You do what you want with it. That's what we do. Pensions are going away. They're a dying thing. And for me personally, I think it's intentional because a defined contribution plan is something where you decide the limits. Every other account, a Roth, an IRA, any other account, the government says this is how much we will let you put in because we want you to make sure that you are paying taxes. However, with this plan, with what we do, in accordance with the IRS tax code, mind you, you set the limit. It's based on your gross revenue as a business owner. And this allows you to legally pay $0 or close to $0 in taxes in accordance, again, we are by the book, in accordance with the IRS tax law. Make as much as you want. You are not confined. You are not limited as a business owner because you're scared to pay taxes without being confined to tax burdens or limited by the government standards. Defeat inflation. Again, you can keep growing. You can keep making money. Not just that. Your money makes you money. You make the money once, it pays you over and over and over and over. Defeat inflation with compound interest and a 0% floor, meaning you're not going to lose anything, right? You make the money. You put it into your private pension, owned by a trust, and it continues to grow, and then you can dip into it. And you can use it for whatever you need to use it for, whether it be personal or business. Own and control your retirement and legacy plan. Guarantee you never run out of money for the business, retirement, or the future. Take yourself from income tax to capital tax bracket and have your money make you money. So again, we're defeating that problem that Andrew Cordell mentioned at that seminar, is that you make the money once, it pays you over and over and over, and you keep more of what you make. Holy cow. Like literally, when I learned this and I started working with Craig, my mind was blown. My mind was absolutely blown. And that's what we do. Now you have the secret. You have the secret to radical ownership within your business and the execution strategy to guarantee its survival. This is what we do. We resolve all of these problems that I have mentioned and make sure that your business goes from startup to cash flowing asset to legacy. So is this right for you? Is this something that will fit the bill for you? Depending on where you're at in the business journey. I know this is small business, a conference. And so maybe you're an entrepreneur, maybe you're starting at the beginning, maybe you have several employees. Depending on where you're at, this is if it fits for you. And if it's right to hop on a call, like if you want to hop on a call and we go over this, I'll have everything set up at the end where you can book a call. And this is who it's right for. If you have 0 to 100 employees, and actually I was able to update this because we work with a TPA and they work directly with the IRS, who allows us to do over 200 employees. So if you are corporate, and I'm not sure there's corporate people here, but if you are corporate, we can work with you. You need more tax deductions. If you have a tax burden at the end of the year, you're writing any form of check to the IRS, that is it. Literally, that is the number one reason people come to us. Even if all these other things we have to kind of finagle, if you have a tax burden, we work with you. As long as you're a business owner, right? You can't just be an individual. It's not a W-2 income. You have to have either an LLC, S Corp, C Corp, K1 partnership, whatever it is. You want to keep more of what you make. As I mentioned before, you cash flow 100K or more annually and have the capital. That means that if you make anything less than 100K, it actually is pretty easy to get things deducted enough so that you are not paying through the nose. You likely also have a lot of business expenses up to that point. Once you start getting over that 100K mark, and I mentioned like the average business owner makes 127,000 per year, right? That's when we're not eating the rich, we're eating the business owner. And that's when we really kind of start to struggle. So anything more than that, and you have the capital, you have to have the capital, right? And so that's kind of where Angel Cordell was mentioning too, where you have to spend it to deduct it, right? So this is where you have, instead of spending it, you have the capital and you're like, I don't want to spend it. I want to put it in here so that after 3 to 5 years, I can do something else with it, or I'm already building my retirement, or you use it for your business, whatever it is. That's how you know it's right for you. If these things resonate, if this fits the bill, then I do have a QR code you can scan here. Go ahead and scan it. You can book your call. I do have an option too. You'll be able to fill out a form and you can attach your last 2 years of tax returns. Sometimes too, a lot of business owners, they'll say, well, my first year wasn't very applicable because I was just starting, but then I made a lot of money last year and I'm on track to do the same or make more this year. You can attach a profit and loss or like a balance sheet, and that's totally fine too. So if you go ahead and scan this QR code, you can book a call straight with me right away. If you're going to the Dallas show, you're going to any of these other small business owner shows, I would love to meet you. I'd love to see you there. Reach out to me on social media, reach out to me through, again, booking a call, whatever it is. I'd love to talk to you more. I want to meet you. I want to know who's here. I want to know your story. I want to know your why. And that's it. So thank you again for attending the webinar. I greatly appreciate you. I greatly appreciate your time. I love interacting with people. I love getting to know your story. I love to know your why. I feel very fulfilled by this personally, and I hope you do as well with what you do for a business, and I'd love to know more. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Let me know or go ahead and book a call.